Now, Joe, Torre, they're both here for the CDI event at the Upper Montclair Country Club. And, Joe, welcome to the show, first off. And we'll talk about the Derek Jeter ceremony yesterday. But we've been talking about this Ray Rice situation. And, I mean, you have a foundation that's built on stopping abuse in the home. You went through it when you were a child growing up. Did you see the video, Joe, and what'd you think?
I did see it on the way here, actually, Michael. And, abuse. I mean, here it is. And it's so disturbing. And unfortunately, in a game of whatever sport you're in, we put so much emphasis on winning that, something like this really should have nothing to do with, what should happen to this guy just for the sake of that violent act right there.
Now, with your mom, when she went through and there was a lot of yelling and things like that, I've heard you tell these stories all the time. We asked the question that we don't even know what the answer is. This happened when this woman was his fiancée, and then she married him. Why do women stay together with men that abuse them?
Well, I can tell you a reason is because if they don't stay and they run off or leave, they're afraid they're going to be hunted down in a lot of instances. That's the fear. We had some youngsters, who were in our program at Margaret's Place, and they put together a video which was so powerful. About four youngsters who were peer leaders, and it was Caught in Traffic, I think it was called. And basically, this young girl was in this house with her mom and dad. Her younger sibling died, and that's sort of open to guessing how that happened. And the dad would abuse the mom, and then the mom would leave, but leave the daughter there. And she had to endure, his wrath. And then, she was so embarrassed about telling anybody about it, she wouldn't tell her friends. And then there was some kind of an auditorium thing at her school where they were talking about abuse. And the kids around her, all her friends, were sort of saying, oh, that person who's in that relationship, they don't know any better. So she was embarrassed to even talk to them about it. So then all of a sudden you wind up the only person who puts an arm around you is somebody who's trying to traffic you. And it's a frightening existence that you really don't know what goes on in people's minds, but you can realize why women stay in this relationship.
And I don't know if there's an answer to this, Joe, but when a guy commits a crime, you usually hear his supporters say, hey, he just made a mistake. You see that video, that doesn't look like somebody who just made a mistake.
Well, I mean, it's certainly... you pointed out earlier. I mean, it didn't look like he was panicked in any way when he did this, and it was dragging her out of the elevator or trying to. It's disturbing, and again, do I think you should necessarily throw him in jail and throw away the key? I think there's still an educational portion, and have him go and get counseling, have him understand how that's not the right thing to do, even though that. That he certainly, must be held accountable for this. There's no question.
We're talking with Joe Torre, and his Safe at Home Foundation does great work in trying to stop stuff like this in the home. Let's talk about more mundane things like Derek Jeter did. What a day at Yankee Stadium. And I just felt that the fans, there was a crackling electricity. I don't know if you felt that they were in their seats, and a lot of ceremonies are not in their seats right away. What did you feel? I mean, that's one of your guys.
And you hit it right, and that's the one thing first thing I noticed was everybody was in their seats.
Right.
And that was pretty cool. And Derek, as you probably know, wasn't necessarily comfortable with the whole thing happening when it did. I know it's a long shot that they're going to get into the postseason, but, it's not over yet, and he's being honored. But he certainly was taken with all the people that showed up, all his friends and players, of course, his family. And he's such a pro. I mean, he took the microphone at the end without any piece of paper in his hand and not only said the right thing, but did it in the right order. Yeah. And he's a remarkable young man. He's still a young man to me.
I mean, how many years and how many decades in baseball you've been involved? Has there been anybody that you can relate him to? Anybody that he reminded you of?
Well, there are people who have done things the right way, and I alluded to it. Actually, I said it in my Hall of Fame speech about Tony Gwynn, and when people compliment him, he says, all I tried to do was play the game the right way. And that's pretty much Derek Jeter. Of course, Derek Jeter doing it on the stage here in New York is remarkable. Single, New York, You were single for a long time.
Right,
Michael,
but he was good looking and rich. There was a difference between the two of us.
You were just rich.
But he just, he kept his priorities in order, and that's not easy to do for a youngster 21, 22, 23, and forward.
And also, just watching the games and just seeing his parents still in the box, still rooting for every hit. I mean, that had to go a long way to making him the man that he is.
No, there's no question. And when his dad, when I saw his dad in the dugout before we went out on the field, he says, "I want to thank you for taking care of my son." I said, "I want to thank you for what you did to make it easy to take care of your son, because great parents." And that's where it all starts. I mean, these are the first educators in a child's life, and he certainly was a grown up even in his early 20s. Right.
Now, I don't mean this in any kind of disparaging way toward him, but I always look at him and I go, "That's the greatest player I've ever seen that's not great at anything." How did he do it?
He's
not a plus runner. He doesn't have a plus arm. I mean, no plus power.
And that's why I think I use the expression, "as tangible as you can feel." I mean, there's something about him that, and I used to say, Michael, at the time when all the shortstops, you had Tejada, you had Garcia-Parra, you had Alex, and I said, if you drop somebody down from Mars, he'd be the bottom of that totem pole, right, because of the natural ability. But what he is able to will himself to do, and in doing that, engages everybody else around him. There's not a selfish bone in his body when it comes to playing the game. He wants a win, and he doesn't care what price has to be paid. The interesting part, and he doesn't show it very often, is that he expects everybody to pay the price the way he does.
Let's talk about this year's team. 4.5 out, 21 left to go. It's going to take a miracle for them to be able to get in, but not hitting.
Why don't they hit?
Yeah, what's going on?
Well, it's usually that guy on the mound. I remember before the game yesterday, and Derek said, "This guy throws 102." I mean, they all know when they're in for. I've never seen so many speed guns get up in the upper 90s and 100 anymore. But, first of all, the thing about hitting and not hitting is the lack of knowledge, and that's what the scheduling does to you as a team. Because, when I was a player, you saw the same pitchers, you saw all those guys a number of times, you got a chance to practice against them. I know you can watch video, but it's not the same as doing it in person. So I think just the strange feeling of facing a guy for the first time makes it a little tougher to hit.